Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a una entrega más de una de las conferencias de Cybersecurity Conference de SISAP. Recuerden que son una entrega total de 7 conferencias a la misma hora. El día de hoy estaremos hablando de un tema muy interesante. El tema de hoy es Information Pollution, Dealing with Human Vulnerabilities. Este tema es una combinación de la inundación que tenemos de información en las redes sociales y en el correo electrónico por las diferentes situaciones que existen tanto local como mundialmente y cómo nuestras vulnerabilidades como humanos nos hacen caer en alguna de las trampas puestas por los cibercriminales. Para este importante tema estaremos hablando con Perry Carpenter de Know Before y Samantha Nanne. Recuerden que tenemos traducción simultánea. Okay, en la barra de abajo ustedes pueden poner la traducción porque Perry pues, nos acompaña desde Estados Unidos y en algún momento nos vamos a pasar en la plática al idioma inglés, pero la traducción es perfecta y vamos a entender todos los temas. Samantha Nanne es SISAP Manager de la Cultura en Sistemas Aplicativos, es una profesional con un baccalaureatus en Artibus en Psicología y Antropología, especializada en Psicología Positiva. Ha dedicado muchos años a trabajar en la mejora de la cultura organizacional, asesorando a diversas empresas en este ámbito. Samantha ha estado expuesta tanto en áreas de ciberseguridad como al área de psicología y ese es el valor que nos va a dar en esta conferencia. Perry Carpenter, he is the Chief Evangelist and Strategy Officer at Know Before. He is the author of Transformational Security Awareness, What Neuroscientists, Storytellers, and Marketers Can Teach Us About Driving Secure Behaviors, and co-author of the Security Culture Playbook, an executive guide to reducing risk and developing your human defense layer. He previously led security awareness, security culture management, and anti-phishing behavior management research at Gartner Research. In addition to covering IAM strategy, CISO program management, mentoring, and technology services provider success strategies. So welcome Samantha and Perry to this conference.
Thank you.
So we are going to start with the first topic, and it's about about navigating information flows. So the digital era and access to social networks and media in general, and with the current situation that we are living in our region and worldwide. So with this vast information, how can we, with this a lot of information, is a challenge for individuals to distinguish between real information and bad propaganda. So how can we empower people to make the right decisions and not be a victim of a phishing attack or bad propaganda and be safe while receiving all this a bunch of information? Can we start with Samantha?
Thank you. Well, I think humans hold a lot of very complex in their heads at the same time. We need as few instructions as possible to comprehend the world and to work as best as we can. So we help users in our organizations as little information as possible on how to detect risk or propaganda information, and so being very direct with them as to what to look for, giving the most simple information that we can, and over communicating this. So once we have like something to communicate, we make simple as we can, and communicate it 1,000 times so that the organization can start to recognize what information out there is really good. That would be something I can say about how to help the users information.
Oh, very good. Yeah, what you're saying is that basically we can also send a lot of information to the user that will end up with information from us to prevent them being victims, but also from all the news around. So it's more information that they have to process. All right, your input on this one.
I'm sorry, maybe I miscommunicated myself right now. I'm saying we can help them see what are the things they can see to understand what information is not, or what could be a possible risk. And then side, make as sure as possible that we make that message very, very simple, and that we say it a lot. It doesn't have to be email. When I over communicate that to the user, it doesn't have to be that we send 1,000 emails to the user or that we spam them or anything. It different communications that the company can do towards the user, which includes communication of, for example, don't click on unknown links or weird links or links that you were not expecting. So this type of communication, but the can say can be in a poster. So making it as simple as we can, and then communicating it in different ways they can be aware.
Thank you, Sammy, for extension. Perry?
Yeah, so with that, I think comes the other reality that oftentimes when we give people information, they kind of just let it pass through their head unless we can show them how relevant it is. So with all the information that Samantha is talking about, all that is good. The and that I would say with that is to make it extremely relevant, in addition to great stories from the news, but also anything that is as close to their specific situation as possible. So if it's an industry, how are these things affecting people or organizations in the same industry? If it is a more of a home and family situation, how is it helping or hurting other people that are like me? It really comes back to many people are not interested in, let's say, the example of an alarm system on their house until they've actually been broken into, or until a friend or family member or close neighbor has been broken into. And so showing the relevance, showing the fact that even though they might not think of themselves as a target, other people or other organizations that look like them are targets very often. And then it starts to click in as to the relevance. And then they're even more ready to understand all those safety tips that we talk about not clicking, not downloading, not interacting, and then of course reporting.
Thank you. Yes, and one important thing about this, what you just mentioned, is about how change the mindset, because most of the time we see cybersecurity more like a technical issue, and we
Right.
don't want to be involved in the responsibility that is also my responsibility to maintain a good security posture. So in your experience, do you know of any particular campaign about awareness that is effective in changing behaviors and changing mindset, and change the behavior of the individual and say, hey, I am part of this, and this is not a technical issue, I am part of this?
Right. So the things that I've seen that work consistently is, in addition to showing how it's extremely relevant to them or their organization directly or their family directly. And people care about their family and their home situation way more than they do about their organization. So the closer you can make it to their central identity, or people, families, neighborhoods that look and sound like them, that is the most relevant we can make it. The secondary to that becomes their city, their region, and then sometimes after that is the organization that they work for. Because primarily, most people see the organization and their relationship is very transactional, and they also tend to believe that the company that they work for has most of the security stuff taken care of so that they don't have to think about it. So the first thing that I would say to do is show them how it's extremely relevant to their specific life and their life circumstance. And then the other thing that I would do is share stories from around their industry about how no matter how much technology an organization puts in place, there's always the chance that a cyber criminal can do something that gets around that technology. And that's where their responsibility fits in. The other thing that I would add to that is that we've seen very, very good data with millions upon millions of people that I've personally seen the measurements around through the company that I work for, is that when you have a phishing training program and you are phishing frequently, at least once a month, then you do see consistent results in the behavior change. You do get the behavior down to where it should be, which is kind of in the very low digits as far as propensity to accidentally click on something or to be tricked into something. And when you have that, the thing that you cannot do is assume then that you can stop training. We humans like to default back to behavior that is much more sloppy and a little bit lazy and doesn't really, and we tend not to think about things. And so we want to build a habit and then we want to maintain that. And one of the best ways to do that is frequent simulated phishing done with the right amount of empathy and the right framing around that program so that people don't feel tricked or made fun of or penalized.
Right. You mentioned about people phishing frequently. So how do you see that some companies, after three mistakes that you fish, basically you are a victim of a fish on a simulation or exercise, uh, you will be like it's a violation to the and you are a risk to the company. And some companies are very strict on this, and they probably gonna have to let go this individual that this the same mistake one time and again. What do you think about that?
So what I tend to think is that an organization that feels like they're at the point of having to fire somebody because they're failing phishing tests, um, there may be other options. And so for me, letting somebody go because of phishing is an extreme last resort and really only reserved for very, very risky organizations, financial services organizations or government organizations, things like that. But before it gets to that point, I think we have to ask a couple questions. Number one is if the CEO of that organization is the person who keeps falling for phishing tests, would you let that person go? And if the answer to that is no, then you shouldn't let anybody else go either. That means that all the creativity, all the extra protections that you would put to keep the CEO or to protect that risk around the CEO, you should extend to everybody else. So once you've got that taken care of, then what you'll find is that you start asking a lot different questions. And you'll start to say, why is this person in a situation where they are very, very likely to click? Are they stressed? Do they have access to systems in places or in areas or at times that they shouldn't have access? Are they rushed? Are we expecting too much of them at certain times? One good example of that, and then I'll yield the floor, is that I heard of one company who was really, really frustrated with the fact that one department kept falling for phishing tests over and over and over again. When they did an investigation, they found out it was the HR recruiting department, and their literal job was to open every attachment that came through because it might be a resume for somebody that they need. So they were put in a situation where, by definition, they would fail. They were also understaffed at the time, and so they were stressed out. And the only metric that they were really measured on is how many applications are you processing, those PDFs that you're opening and responding to, and so on. So when you look at that, then you start to say this person, based on our understanding of phishing failures, is destined to fail. They're in a very high risk situation. So then how do we bring technology along that will help protect them? And that's where some kind of application sandboxing might come in, some kind of virtual machine might come in. There's lots of other things that you start to ask and answer related to those specific situations. So that's the way that I would start to frame those conversations.
Excellent, excellent. I really like the example of the CEO fishing, because most of the time we are very flexible with upper management, and it should be the other way around, right? Samantha, what's your input on this? We are talking about changing mindsets.
Thank you. Sorry, I got lost here for a second. But I heard a little bit of what Perry said about having to phishing practices, because that's what helps change behavior, and I totally agree. I think the more that we can let people get close to the consequences, like mentally, the more that they will be able to visualize what happens, because our mind cannot spend time visualizing everything at the same time. So things that are like from us, we don't take that seriously, not because we don't want to or we don't care, but because our mind is thinking about that all the time. So if we can get people really close to the consequence and to visualize it and see it and get them to imagine it and do a phishing attack and click on it, and so start to see those things, I think that will help a lot. So making it part of the culture a little bit. So making it part of the culture, we have a thing I was thinking the other day. When you leave your computer, not lock it when you get up. Somebody will get up from their desk and send an invite to the department saying you are going to invite to pizza to everybody. And then you have to buy the pizza. That's like the thing you have to do. And so it's become part of our culture, and now everybody lives with the fear of having to buy pizza for the whole department because we've had to do it several times. So if in the measure that it can be made part of our culture and the things that we talk about and what other that helps a lot changing the mindset.
Thank you, Samantha. Now, these two changing mindset topic that we should discuss, it takes me to the next topic, and this is about security controls, technology that we use and processes that we have in place in order to address human vulnerabilities. So sometimes we buy new technology, right, and we create new policies trying to address the human vulnerabilities. We try to anticipate the mistakes of the humans, but at some point, technology is not going to be effective. So, according to your experience, Perry, how close can we get with technology to address and control and be safe, trying to reduce these humans to for committing mistakes?
So the data that I typically see is that systems like a secure email gateway will block about 9 out of 10. Maybe some of the ones that are not as great might block about 8 out of 10 phishing emails, which means that 10 to 20% of the threats are likely getting to your end users. And so that's a dangerous place. And it's not because the vendors of those technologies are not competent or good or really trying hard. They're trying as hard as they can, and they're using the technology the best that they can. The biggest problem is that this is an arms race. And so if I'm a cyber criminal, then I'm constantly going to be trying to understand how these detection mechanisms work and how I can work around that. And so from a secure email gateway perspective, that means that they may shift from URL-based phishing or download-based phishing to something like a business email compromise phish that has no link, has no download, is just somebody asking another person to do something for them. So how's an email gateway going to filter for that? Or let's say you have something in place that does filter for that, and it understands some of the trigger mechanisms that might be at play to get somebody to do that kind of action, like send tax information or credit card information. So assuming somebody gets the secure email gateway fixed, which that's not, I don't think, happening anytime soon, then the cyber criminal would move on to another avenue. They would just call somebody up in the organization and try to trick them while over the phone, or they might send a text message, or they might do, any of a dozen other things. And so for me, the main takeaway is technology is good. We build security in layers. The one layer we cannot forget is the human that may be at the receiving end of whatever way a cyber criminal is used to get around the protections that are in place. And for decades, security professionals and security programs have underinvested and undervalued humans. And all we've seen is a constant, steady drip of data breaches that show that that's a failing strategy. And so we have to focus on the humans, because the technology, as good as it gets, is never going to be 100%.
Right, Perry. And you remember the last incident that we had in Vegas? Well, they had in Vegas, it was not email. It was not technology that could block. It was only the user, because the
Right.
incident started with a phone call, right? A person saying that it was from support when it was actually a criminal. So the reason why we are talking about this in particular is because sometimes we think that with technology, right? With technology, we can protect 100% of type of phishing attacks, which is not valid according to what we are saying. There are some other attacks that we can use as a reference, but nowadays you receive a phone call for a support guy saying, "Hey, I need to get into your computer," and so on. That's how it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a $30 billion organization that was taken down with, I think it was just a little bit of LinkedIn research and a 10-minute phone call. And so we do see in that the very high value organizations with lots and lots of technology that are security minded organizations can have this gap where they've just not accounted for the fact that somebody can call up a support desk and trick somebody into doing things. For some reason, they didn't think about that. The other thing is that there are probably some technical things that they could have or should have done better. There potentially could have been better network segmentation. There could have been more multi-factor authentication in place. There could have been a lot of different things that we speculate about potentially not being there. But the fact of the matter in this case is that a well-valued, security-minded organization did not have some of the basics of protecting humans down, and they became a victim because of that. And so we have to think about the ways that cyber criminals can get around even some of the best technology and go straight for the human. And we need to start to threat model that a lot better.
Excellent. One thing, Perry, because we see now we are talking about corporate level. I mean, employees of one company on a awareness program, but we are seeing in the region a challenge mainly for our financial institutions, because they need their customers, financial institutions customers, be aware of all these type of attacks, and particularly one attack that is called the SIM swap. You know how it works.
Mhm.
So it's a challenge for the financial institution to educate customers, right, when possible, to not be a victim of this type of attacks. How do you see this challenge from these institutions to have a security awareness, but not for employees but the end customers?
Yeah, that is something that service organizations like banks and health organizations, and others have been struggling with for a long time. Because again, one of the things that a customer tends to assume is that the financial institution or the healthcare institution or the government institution has their security taken care of. And then in these events where they do not, the customer, the normal consumer, they don't necessarily feel like it's their job or that it's really within their power, because their mindset traditionally is that if big bank X can get hacked, well, then I'm just a little person. What can I do to stop that? And so they're coming from an inherent feeling of helplessness that they're having to work through. And also, with that helplessness, they don't necessarily feel like they have the responsibility. They feel like it should not be them because they are participating in a service relationship with the bank or with the healthcare organization or so on. And that's really, really difficult to be able to deal with. The only way is, or maybe not the only way, but a good way to deal with that or start dealing with that is to use stories of regular people who these things have happened to, and even more important, stories about where criminals tried to take advantage of somebody, but they did not. And not because the bank or whatever else had it under control, but because the consumer knew the right thing and did the right thing and they protected themselves, their family, and they become a hero in that situation. So it's storytelling across two sides. One is the thing that can happen, and then the other story is the empowered person that becomes a hero in that situation.
Very nice, very nice example of how to make it attractive for customers with success stories. So Samantha, now we are going to talk about cultural and organizational impact. So at the individual level, we always, as we mentioned before, that somebody else is taking care of, right, of things and the cybersecurity. How can be the cultural and organizational responsibles to uh, embed security into everyday operations of a company and make it part of the culture of the company? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit related with what you and Perry were talking about a few moments ago. It starts with leadership. If the leaders are not convinced, or if the leaders are made exceptions for, it's much harder. So the best way to put something into the culture that you want it to be part of the culture, anything, and we're talking about cybersecurity in this, but anything, is through the leaders. So it is going to be much more, I think, beneficial and a huge impact if communication comes directly from your leader, or if he can say, hey, listen, you have a training on it, I expect you to do it for tomorrow or something, than if communication just comes from somewhere, right? So I would start maybe with the leaders, bringing the leaders close, making them very aware, making them responsible for their team's security as well, working with them, and then through the leaders and also different communication strategies and drills and practices, which we've talked about, that can go into the rest of the organization. We were saying before, also being as clear as we can, giving as little messages as possible. So if we can make the message very concise, and in how we can, just being very that what we do matches our work. So recognizing people that are doing really well and sticking to consequences when things are not being well, really just taking seriously what we're talking about. So if we're going to say we're a cybersecurity oriented company and this is going to be our behavior, well, then be serious modeling the behavior and implementing recognition and consequences about that. And definitely what I said before, getting the leaders in, holding them accountable.
Very good. Samantha, from your experience and from your background as well, there's always a group of people that rejects, is reluctant to follow any security awareness program because they said, I already know I am not going to be a victim. So they keep failing to follow the programs. And this also affects at the cultural level, right? Because this person that is reluctant to follow the security programs, he's is saying others not to do it or influencing others not to do it. So how is the best way to change the behavior of these people that don't want to, because it happens, I'm pretty sure that to all the audience here happens that they have a very difficult group of people. It can be upper management as well, all right, or techie group that don't want to follow the rule. What's your input on this?
Okay, it is a little bit hard because it's a special group that actually will have no consequences no matter what. It is going to be very hard because you're going to say, please do everything, and they'll be like, I won't do it, and nothing will happen to me. And if it is true that absolutely nothing will happen to them if they don't do the training or fail the thing, it is going to be very, very hard. So part of it would be, are we willing to take the consequences to everybody? And it doesn't have to be like really severe consequence. It can be company what happens when you violate procedures or things that are in our culture, and this is C. But so the first thing would be, if we're going to put it in paper that something is going to happen, so that then it has to happen to everyone, or we have to be equitative. And the other thing would be, some people might do it weirdly. Some others might just really forget, and it doesn't exempt them from responsibility of doing. Should just really might not really care that much. So maybe with them, a lot of accountability and the leadership helps a lot, right? So if the leader is accountable and if the leader is responsible for his team, the leader will make sure his team does it. He will hold them accountable and do the consequences to his team. So leaders are going to be the key. If the leader is convinced that the team is going to work out perfectly, if the leader doesn't really care a lot and is not held responsible for himself or for it's going to be a little bit harder, I think.
Oh, thank you, Sami. Let's go back to Perry and his inputs on this cultural and organizational impact.
Yeah, so totally agree. If there is a group of people in an organization that there will never be consequences for if they don't care or behave the right way around security, then you're essentially breaking the culture of the organization. You're saying that security is not as important as you're trying to say that it is. And so the first thing is to realize that you have two things at your disposal. We talk about carrots and sticks, or negative rewards and positive rewards. One of the interesting things that comes out of that is that negative rewards and positive rewards both work really, really well in the short term, especially if you're using positive rewards and you find interesting ways to increase the variability of that, to where people don't really know what to expect, but they're pleasantly surprised by the reward or the recognition that they get. That essentially taps into the same dopamine response, that chemical response in our brain that happens whenever somebody goes and pulls a slot machine lever and they win a jackpot, because they had no idea that they were actually going to win, but they're pleasantly surprised. And now they're in that for a long time because they know it can happen for them. So when we're talking about positive reward systems, that's really, really powerful. When people are doing the right thing, if we bring the right recognition at a time or in a way or to an amount that they never expected before, then they're pleasantly surprised. And now other people start to model towards that as well. The other thing is we basically have three things that we can play with. Motivation, whether somebody's strongly motivated or negatively motivated, whether something is easy to do or difficult to do, and the ways that they're being reminded to do that. And so if they don't have much motivation, then we have to realize that we have to make the thing that we want them to do as easy as possible. If they have a lot of motivation and they're naturally inclined to behave in a secure manner, then the behavior that we want can be a little bit more difficult because their motivation is going to help them overcome that. But there are several things where, regardless of how motivated somebody is, they could be really, really strongly motivated, but there are certain behaviors that are just really, really difficult to do. And in those cases, we might bring some assistive technology along. We might find times where maybe they're more motivated and they're just going to push through it. Or maybe we find a way to make the behavior easier to do by making that smaller in some way. So there's always questions that we can ask and answer about why people aren't doing the thing that we want them to do and how to naturally encourage them to behave the way that we want them to do, so that we can set up the pattern that will then start to become a habit. And then we can also start to replicate that into things like peer pressure, social reward systems, and so on, so that gets reflected out into the culture.
Oh, it is very important to understand how users are taking the security awareness program, to understand where we need to adjust and what needs to be adjusted. About this, I have a question, Perry. Do you see any difference on how effective a security program is, let's say, on a financial institution compared to a healthcare institution, for example? Are different challenges that they are facing?
There's different challenges. There's different effects to that. Of course, both of them are heavily regulated. But when I look at the data that I have access to, every year we run a security culture survey. We also run a phishing by industry benchmark survey, and we look at several different verticals, I think up to 19 verticals, including financial services and healthcare and insurance and governments and utilities and all of that. And what we find is that from a culture perspective and a resilience perspective, financial services are usually some of the strongest organizations in the world, regardless of region that they're in. And it's because of the customer expectation that they keep their stuff safe, and then also the governmental regulation that is imposing certain standards on that. Healthcare is a little bit of a different story. There's a lot of regulation and there's also high expectation, but there's a variability in that many healthcare organizations are very, very dispersed. Some of them operate out of university environments. Some of them are private. Some of them are, really, really big. Some are really, really small. And there are good regulations in place, but there's also in those different organizations wide variations in what they're doing for access control, segmentation of duties, training, all of that. So they tend to struggle a little bit more than financial services.
Excellent. Samantha?
Yes. About the dispersion on the.
I was just checking if you were there. I'm moving now to the next topic. How important is to understand the behavior right? And the response of the users and the attackers to use that input as insight, to understand this psychology behind users and attackers, to improve our security programs and security awareness programs. What you think on the behavior behind humans and being vulnerable and attackers?
So I think this is really related, because most of the attacks try to be every time more similar to the actual human behavior, and especially when they become more specific or more targeted, they try to behave similarly, or try to like portray some behavior. So the maybe that I could say about that is humans are really good at picking up patterns and picking the patterns. So since we pick up patterns of how people and usually behaves around us and faults in those patterns, what we could do is take advantage of that and have like an internal rule saying, if the behavior seems a little bit suspicious, I will act suspiciously towards it. Not completely hostile, but being aware that if we are detecting like a failure of behavior, it could be anything, right? A weird email from a person I was not expecting, or somebody that usually talks to me, talking to me through another thing, or the greeting was not how it usually is and everything, just being a little bit more suspicious. So I think understanding that figure could help us a lot. And also, well, knowing that if imitating behavior is what is coming, so that the attacks are more specialized, trying to maybe publish as less behavior or cues about me as I can, so that it cannot be misused in my organization or in a bad way, I think.
Thank you very much, Sammy. Perry, what's your input on this one?
So I really like what Samantha said about if the thing that is happening to the person is suspicious in some way, then the way to react to that is with suspicion, right? It sounds really, really simple, but when you hear it put that way, it's profound. There's implications to that. It means that a couple things. Number one, it means that I'm going to slow down enough to process that situation. And so if something seems off, I need to move out of a reactive mode. I don't just need to click on something or respond to something or act in a certain way. Instead, we do what we do when we're suspicious. We slow down a little bit. We kind of widen our field of view. We look at the situation a little bit more deeply. We probably take a deep breath, maybe try to get our thoughts together, and then we methodically deal with the situation. That's the gift that suspicion gives us, is the ability and the incentive to slow down and to be more methodical, to engage our system 2 brain, if we're thinking about Daniel Kahneman types of psychology, where we're really treating the situation that we're in much more like a math problem than like a game of catch. Because games of catch, there's a lot of automatic motor memory that's going on. But when we deal with math, when we deal with logic-based situations, we slow down and our mind enters a different gear. And suspicion gives us that gift. That little gut reaction that we get that something doesn't feel right gives us that gift to where we can slow down and assess things more critically.
Very good, Perry. I like that last part. And one additional thing, now with this boom of the artificial intelligence, attackers are getting better and better. Now it doesn't matter if they are from continent, and they can write very good emails in Spanish. And you are very successful in creating this security awareness campaign. So, what are you doing to keep up with the pace of this artificial intelligence boom?
We're doing, and then we're doing that, meaning the company that I work for, and then also me personally have been doing a ton of research and prototyping a lot of our own tools, anticipating what cyber criminals and others are trying to do, and really understand what is possible. So one of the things that we do, of course, as an organization that focuses on training, is we are creating training modules and pieces of material that help raise the awareness of people around the world about what is possible with AI. The other thing is that we're incorporating AI into a lot more of the systems that we use to actually train people. So we've been doing this for a while, but even more so over the past year and a half with the advent or the recognition that large language model based AI is really pushing the world into a different place. We use and have the capability to allow AI to pick what phishing template a specific person is trained on, when they should get that, why they should be receiving that at that time, as opposed to somebody else, maybe in the same job role or the same region. We're doing the same thing. We're catching events when a person attempts to do something, and we're using AI in order to deliver a message to that person at a specific time, hopefully in the way that they'll receive it and respond to it the best way. And we're showing the world what cyber criminals are very likely capable of as well on the dark side, so that their eyes are open and hopefully they are a little bit more aware and trying to be alert for the types of attacks that could be coming.
Right. And you mentioned something very important, Perry, that now most of the resources available, everybody can access. You have to pay sometimes some few dollars to have the membership. But what we have to be
Right.
aware is that, that the good ones are using artificial intelligence, but the bad ones also, they are also using those resources. So we have to keep up with this race, right? So to be
Yeah.
aware at the same time that they are doing, and that's an excellent that you are sharing with us what you are doing, because we can trust that our security awareness program will be up to date with the artificial intelligence progress as we move. There is news every day about artificial intelligence, and so it's difficult to keep up with the pace. Now, I think we are about to reach our time. I would like to hear from you some final remarks about this conference that we have, and also for Perry, I saw you have some experience on mentoring and management for CISO programs, specifically for security awareness. Maybe you can include in your final remarks something for the CISOs that are in the audience, and then Samantha.
Sure. Should Samantha go first?
No, you can go first.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, things broke up a little bit on my side real quick.
Sorry.
Yeah. So for me, one of the things that I always think about on the security side for CISOs is that, and this is reflective of something I already said, but I'll just restate it. We as technology professionals tend to put a lot of our faith in technology, to the extent that for decades we've been underinvesting and not really focusing on humans the way that we should. And it's reflected in the budgets that people have, the way that they spend that. They'll spend lots and lots of money on firewalls and secure email gateways and so on. And then when it comes to something like awareness or training, they only feel comfortable spending a little amount. But when you look at the vast majority of where data breaches come from, over 3/4 of those are related to some kind of human issue. Some human was involved and was tricked into making the wrong decision, doing the wrong thing, accidentally did the wrong thing, or with intent did the wrong thing. And so if the human is the cause of 75% of data breaches, then it seems like we really need to bolster, we need to start paying a lot more attention to that layer of our security stack. And that translates into more time, more focus, more attention, and more budget. The other thing that I would say real quick is that one of the main issues that CISOs or technology professionals tend to bring up whenever phishing, an actual successful phishing attack and data breach happens is, let's say that the phishing email gets through the secure email gateway, it gets to the end user's inbox, the end user is tricked into doing that, and then maybe all of a sudden there's ransomware and the organization is crippled. It's almost like the MGM type of thing, but not. It's an email in this situation. So the first thing that many technology professionals and CISOs ask is, well, did the organization have a security awareness and training program? And almost always the answer is yes, they did. And what the response then is, in that situation where a phishing email got through, somebody clicked on the phishing email, and the organization is now having a really bad time, what they'll say is, see, security awareness and training is worthless. Let's not do it. Let's double down on technology. There's a critical flaw in that argument. The critical flaw is that is the only thing that they're saying, let's defund in this situation. Let's move away from security awareness. They're forgetting that that email went past the secure email gateway. They're forgetting that it landed in an end user's inbox. They're forgetting that when that person clicked on the email, they had no other defenses that would stop that infection. And so nobody is then saying, let's not have a secure email gateway. Nobody is saying, let's not have a firewall. Nobody is saying, let's throw out our endpoint protection platforms because they were ineffective. The only thing that people have that response to is something related to humans. And the reason for that is because humans are hard to understand.
Excellent, Perry. I really like your closing remarks. Appreciate it. Thanks. Samantha?
Thank you. That last sentence, humans really are hard to understand. We're very complex. But I would say that, yes, a huge win would be already to have most of the users aware and alert. I was explaining earlier, if that happens, then many other cognitive processes happen that will help us make better decisions. So I think, yeah, as I said before, communicating very, very simple, concise messages and having leaders involved is part of the culture, the environment that we move on, part of our language, talking and everything. Those are things that could really help us be alert most of the time, because we're going to be hearing about it and talking about it a lot. It's going to be expected of us to know and being aware, and then moving to be alert, so that before I do things, I think. So yes, that's what I would say about that topic.
Thank you very much, Samantha and Perry, for being with us today. Muchísimas gracias, Perry y Samantha. Muchas gracias a todos los que se conectaron el día de hoy. Los esperamos el próximo martes con otra entrega de la serie de conferencias que tenemos, para un total de 7 para ustedes. Nos vemos el martes. Que tengan una buena tarde.